My name is Serena Grace Williams, though for a long time I wasn't sure that name still belonged to me. I'm 60 years old now, sitting in the same creaky rocking chair my grandmother rocked me in when I was small. A cup of chamomile cooling on the side table, the Georgia night pressing against the windows like it wants to get in. People keep asking me to tell the whole story, the real one, not the version that floated around town or showed up in the papers. They want to know how a girl who started out with nothing but bruises and secrets made it to the other side of 60 still breathing. So here it is. No pretty filters, no soft edges. Just the truth, raw as an open wound. I was born in 1965 in a little mill town outside Augusta. The kind of place where the river smelled like bleach on hot days and every porch light flickered the same tired yellow. My mother, Lorraine, worked doubles at the textile plant. My father, when he was around, smelled of cheap whiskey and other women's perfume. The first memory I have is of being 4 years old, hiding under the kitchen table while he threw a chair across the room because supper was late. The leg of that chair clipped my forehead and left a scar I still carry, thin and pale, right at the hairline. Then there was Alina, my sister, 2 years older and already beautiful in the way that makes people forgive terrible things. From the beginning she hated sharing the air with me. If Mama brought me a candy bar, Alina stole it. If Daddy looked at me too long, Alina pinched me black and blue where the marks wouldn't show. When I was 6 and she was 8, she held my head under bathwater until I stopped kicking. She told Mama I slipped. Mama believed her, because Alina had the kind of smile that made lies feel like gospel. By the time I was 10, I had learned to make myself small. I spoke softly, walked on the sides of my feet so the floorboards wouldn't creak, and never, ever looked Alina in the eye for more than a second. People thought I was shy. The truth was, I was surviving. The first mysterious thing that ever happened to me came the summer I turned 13. I woke in the middle of the night to find a man standing at the foot of my bed. Moonlight cut across his face. He was tall, pale, with black hair slicked back and eyes that caught the light like a cat's. He didn't speak, only looked at me for a long time, then put a single red rose on my pillow and left through the window without a sound. The rose was perfect. No thorns, the petals soft as silk. I hid it in my Bible because I was terrified and enchanted in equal measure. I never told a soul. 3 nights later, the same man, the same rose. It went on every full moon for a year. I started calling him my ghost. I never learned his real name until decades later, when the name Richard Hale meant only dread. At 17 I fled. I took a Greyhound out of Augusta with $43 and a paper bag of clothes. I landed in Atlanta, rented a room above a beauty shop, and started waiting tables at a diner on Peachtree. That's where I met Daniel Williams. He was 25, wore starched white shirts even on his days off, and had a slow smile that felt like sunlight after years underground. He told me on our first date that he'd been waiting his whole life to meet someone who looked like she carried the whole world behind her eyes. I laughed, because it was true, and I kissed him before the check came. 6 months later, we were married in the little chapel behind the diner, me in a thrift store lace dress, and him in his only suit. I thought I had finally outrun every shadow. I was wrong. It started small. Notes under the windshield wiper of our car. Always the same heavy cream paper, same black fountain pen ink. You don't deserve him. Then hang up phone calls at 3 a.m. Dead roses left on the welcome mat. I told myself it was Alina. She had always sworn I would never be happy, but the handwriting wasn't hers, and Alina was still back in the mill town, married to a deputy, pumping out babies and smiling for photographs. Daniel said I was imagining things. He was climbing the ranks at the bank, working late, coming home, smelling of someone else's floral perfume. I wanted to believe in him so badly, I swallowed every doubt like broken glass. In 1994, we moved to Charlotte for his promotion. New city, new house, with creaky hardwood floors and a widow's walk that looked over maple trees. That was the year the stalking turned violent. Someone slashed all 4 tires while we slept. Someone poured sugar in the gas tank of Daniel's company car. Someone mailed me photographs of myself sleeping, taken through our bedroom window. The police came, shrugged, told us to get a dog. We got a dog, a German shepherd named Captain. 3 nights later, Captain was found in the backyard with his throat cut ear to ear. There was a note pinned to his collar with a silver hat pin. Next time, it's you, Serena. I started seeing Dr. Aaron Blake after I found myself standing on the widow's walk at 2 a.m., barefoot in February, trying to decide whether the fall would kill me fast enough. He was a thin man with kind eyes and a voice like warm tea. In his quiet office that smelled of sandalwood, I began to speak things I had never said aloud. About Daddy's fists, Elena's bathtub game, the ghost with the roses, Daniel's late nights, the photographs, the dead dog. Dr. Blake listened without flinching. He told me trauma is a house you keep living in long after the walls fall down. I cried so hard that day I threw up in his little brass wastebasket. Across the street from Dr. Blake's office lived an old woman named Mrs. Evelyn Collins. She was 80, if she was a day. Always in the garden wearing a straw hat, tied under her chin with a scarlet ribbon. One afternoon I was leaving therapy shaking so hard I could barely walk, and she called me over the low stone wall. She pressed a small cloth bundle into my hand. Inside was a piece of angel food cake and a St. Christopher medal. "You're not alone, child," she whispered, and her eyes were the clear blue of creek water. From that day on, every Thursday after therapy she left something on her porch railing for me. A slice of pound cake, a single gardenia, once a tiny hand-stitched quilt no bigger than a handkerchief. She never asked questions. She just knew. In 1998, Daniel said he wanted a divorce. Just like that, over meatloaf on a Tuesday. He had met someone younger, someone less complicated. Her name was Kimberly. She was 26, blonde, and worked in the loan department. I signed the papers without a fight. I was tired down to my marrow. That same week the threats stopped, completely. No notes, no dead animals, no photographs, silence. I thought it was finally over. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore and started working the register downstairs. Nights were the worst. I slept with the lights on and a butcher knife under my pillow. Some evenings I walked to Mrs. Collins's house just to sit on her porch swing and listen to the cicadas. She told me stories about her husband who had died in Korea, about raising 3 boys alone, about learning to forgive the unforgivable. One night she took my hand and said, "The devil you know is still the devil, Serena. Don't let him rent space in your head forever." In 2002 I got a letter postmarked Augusta, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. Elena smiling in a hospital bed, holding a newborn baby girl. On the back, in handwriting I hadn't seen in years, were the words, "She has your eyes." I didn't sleep for 3 days. I drove back to the mill town on a gray October morning. The house looked smaller, half the windows boarded. Mama was dead, Daddy long gone, but Elena was there, thinner eyes, sunk deep. The baby was named Grace, after our grandmother. Elena cried when she saw me. She said she was sorry, that she had been sick in the head as a child, that jealousy had eaten her alive. She swore she had never sent the notes, never hurt the dog, never taken those pictures. I wanted to believe her. Part of me still does. I stayed 3 days. On the last night I woke to find another red rose on my pillow, perfect, thornless. The window was locked from the inside. I left before dawn, and never went back. Years slid by. I dated a little, nothing serious. Dr. Blake retired. Mrs. Collins passed in her sleep at 92. I found her in the garden, kneeling among the roses, as if she had simply decided to rest. I kept seeing her St. Christopher medal every day for the rest of my life. Then, in 2017, everything cracked wide open. I was 52, working part-time at the library, when a man walked in asking for books on Georgia history. Tall, pale, black hair gone silver at the temples, eyes that caught the light, like a cat's. My knees buckled. I knew him before he spoke. He said his name was Richard Hale. He was 71 years old. He had been my ghost. He told me the story in the quiet corner by the encyclopedias, voice soft, almost apologetic. In 1978 he had been 32, a private investigator hired by my father, my own father, to keep an eye on his girls. Daddy was convinced. Mama was cheating and wanted proof. Richard watched the house for weeks. One night he saw my father beat me so badly, I couldn't stand. Something in him snapped. Instead of reporting back, he started leaving roses, a promise to a terrified child that someone saw her, someone cared. He lost his license, lost everything, but he kept watching over me from a distance for 40 years. The stalking, the notes, the photographs, the dog, none of it was him. He swore it on his mother's grave. I didn't know whether to embrace him or call the police. He gave me a box before he left. Inside were hundreds of photographs he had taken from afar. Me graduating secretarial school, me on my wedding day, Me holding Mrs. Collins's hand at her husband's grave. Me leaving therapy, crying. On the bottom was a single journal, every entry dated, every rose documented. The last page read, "I never meant to frighten you. I only wanted you to know you were not invisible." I sat on the library floor and sobbed so hard the security guard thought someone had died. 2 weeks later, Richard Hale was found dead in his little apartment. Heart attack, sitting at his desk, with a red rose in a bud vase. In his will, he left me everything. $37,000, a house in Savannah I never knew existed, and a letter that simply said, "Live loudly now, little one. The shadows are gone." But the shadows weren't gone, because there was still one question that clawed at me every night. If Richard never sent the threats, who did? It took another 5 years. 5 years of digging, hiring my own investigator, pulling old phone records, bribing a retired detective with bourbon and banana bread. In the spring of 2023, I got the call. The threats, the stalking, the dead dog, the divorce papers served the same week. The terror stopped. All of it had been Daniel, my Daniel, with Kimberly's help, and later with money from a woman named Kimberly he married 6 months after our divorce. They had orchestrated everything to make me seem unstable, to push me over the edge or at least out of the picture so he could keep the house, the savings, the reputation. When I signed the papers without a fight, they no longer needed the campaign of fear. They simply walked away. Daniel was arrested in August 2023. Animal cruelty, stalking, harassment, conspiracy. Kimberly turned state's evidence and got probation. Daniel got 12 years. The day they led him out in handcuffs, he looked up at the cameras and said, "I never loved her anyway." I watched the footage on the evening news, sitting in the same rocking chair I'm in now, and felt something inside me finally go quiet. That is the shocking truth I carry. The person who swore to protect me was the one trying to destroy me. The ghost who left roses was the only one trying to save me. I am 60 now. My hair is silver, my hands shake when it's cold, and some nights I still check the locks 3 times. But I have learned a few things the hard way, and if you're listening, I'll tell you what they are. You do not owe your forgiveness to people who hurt you on purpose. Some monsters wear familiar faces, and sometimes the truest love you will ever know comes from a stranger who risks everything just to leave a thornless rose on a terrified child's pillow. I keep Richard's last rose pressed between the pages of my Bible, right where I hid the first one 50 years ago. It is brown and brittle now, but when I touch it, I am 13 again, lying in the dark. And for one trembling moment I know I am not alone. That has been enough. This is Serena Grace Williams, and I survived. Not cleanly, not without scars, but I survived. And that, my loves, is the most dangerous truth of all.